So now it's my pleasure to introduce Darren Ford here. So for those of you who attended last year's Grow Summit, you'll remember Darren as personable, high energy, and an engaging speaker. So Darren has done everything from selling advertisement in the IT industry, being a headmaster for a school in Bulgaria, and leading training and people development in the corporate world. He is the author of several books, including The Millennial Challenge, How to Unleash Today's Young Talent, and 3 + Fluor equals success. Darren believes because we spend over half our adult life at work, we must not only do our job well, but also enjoy doing that work. His presentations center on helping people find success and gratification in the daily work activities. So Darren is the owner, founder of Pro Consulting. He's been married for over 3 years, has 3 grown boys and 1 grandson. So if you guys will help me in giving a big Fluor welcome to Darren Ford.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you. Can we actually give a round of applause to Crystal, Laura, and John, because they all 3 did a great job. Good job. And I want to, John, I appreciate that. I do want to make one small clarification. I do have 3 boys. They're 27, 25, 23, and 1 grandson. And I've been married for 30 years, not 3 years. So I just thought it was important that I made that clarification. Okay, so no, it was good though. It was good. My wife will be really surprised if I come home and I say, "Hey, we've been only married for 3 years." So yeah. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. Hey, raise your hand if you were here last time, or if this is the first time you've heard me speak. Really? Right? Good. Most of you got that. Yeah. Raise your hand if you never raise your hand. All right. This is about as good as it's going to get, okay? So laugh now, right? Because it's going to be, it'll otherwise be a long time. No, it's truly an honor to be back here. And Laura, Crystal, you did a great job with your talk, because really what she talked about, it flows very well with what we're going to do here. And as I talk to some people here, I realize that there are people who have been here for a long time. You know, I'm talking to people who have been here for 10 and 15 and 20 years, and that doesn't happen by accident. So what we're going to talk about today, I think, is an incredibly important topic. I speak a lot on a few different topics. I talk on leadership. I talk on corporate culture. I did write a book on millennials. I've got those 3 millennials. I've worked with millennials, so I wrote a book on millennials, which is really good. My wife says it's just because I'm immature. That's why it all worked out okay. But the talk that we're going to do today, that we actually started last time at the summit, is probably the most important talk or presentation I've ever given. Considering where we are today as a society, it's important that we figure out how we get along. And let's face it, we're not. So we got a lot of ground to cover, so let's start by just jumping in and watching this video. We're born to care for one another. We don't care what you look like. We don't care the color of your skin. We don't care how you talk. We don't care if you can talk. We don't care if you can do anything for us in return. We're simply born to care for one another. But somewhere along the way, we take a turn and we walk away from our true nature, and we start rather than looking out for others, we start looking out for ourselves. We stop listening and we start debating and we start judging. And I would say that today, not only do we take a turn, but we're running as fast as we can from our true nature, really faster than we've ever done. Would you agree? I mean, I tell you, raise your hand if you think that society is more rude today than ever. Raise your hand. I mean, we all feel it. We all feel it. I could give you, this isn't a research-heavy presentation, but I could give you lots of research that proves that, what we're feeling. For example, on this one, the amount of rudeness that we feel at least once a month has been going, in the corporate world, has been going up for the last 10 years. And so the reason this topic is important is because the incivility that we're starting to, that we know, that we feel in our politics, in our social media, just in our world, that incivility is going to start creeping in more and more inside the 4 walls here if we're not careful. And that's what we're going to talk about for the next 60 minutes or so, is how can we prevent that? How can we prevent that? Before we get into the, and it's a very simple solution, not simplistic. Jack Welch would always say, Jack Welch, who was the CEO of GE, he would always make the difference. GE was a very complex organization, much like you guys. And he would always talk about, he loved simple solutions, and he would distinguish between simplistic and simple. What we're going to talk about today is very, very simple. Not always easy to implement, but it's a simple concept to understand. So how did we get here is one question. I think the bigger question, though, is how do we get back there? How do we get back to the point where we're caring for one another and we're kissing boo-boos? We need to get back there. So the first part of our presentation today, we're going to talk about this thing, this idea of incivility. What is it? I mean, we kind of know what it is, but I want to make sure that we truly understand what is it. What do we do? Do we recognize it? What are the outcomes of having incivility hit here? So we're going to look at, I have some quotes throughout the day. We're going to look at some videos. So here's the first one. Watch this first video, which is an example of incivility.
I have a question about the shareholder meeting.
Sure, just send me an email.
But you're sitting right next to me.
Well, just because we're on an airplane doesn't mean we change the way we do business. Just send me an email.
Okay.
Another email from that suck-up Brian about the shareholders meeting. Watch this. Delete.
Now, it's a really good thing that AirTran is out of business, because then I couldn't use that clip, right? And so they're owned by Southwest. I don't know if Southwest would. I probably should check with them. They may not be happy that I'm doing that, but that was a long time ago. But obviously, that is fictitious, but it's a good example of what could incivility in our corporate world look like. Here's a real example that I pulled off of YouTube. Watch this.
Every time you're with a customer, and there's some things I hear I do not like, because you think you know everything, and you don't know half of what you think you know, that I have to suffer for. So get with the program.
It's not the best clip in the world, but when you go onto YouTube trying to find examples of incivility, it's hard to find one that I can use in a corporate setting. They're either too violent or the language just isn't good. But this is a pretty good example of what incivility at work could look like. I don't know if you heard all that, but it appears to me that was either a customer or maybe an employee who was trying to take a video of a boss berating an employee. And he said, something, you think you know everything, but you don't know half of what you think you do. And get with the program. And that was done in a public setting. Either those were all employees or it could have been those were customers there. Right? Incivility is really, that's what I mean. If we're not careful, we're going to let this idea of what we say to people get out of control, and it's going to impact our business here. And by the way, add this in there, add technology, and it gets much worse. We say things to people, we tweet things about people or to people, or we write things that we would never do to them face to face. Look at this example. I tell you what, before this, what do you think about, let's do this. At your time, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I want you to talk about what is incivility at your table. 30 seconds, and then we're going to come back as a larger group and talk about it. So 30 seconds, when you hear incivility at work, how does that work itself out? Go, 30 seconds. That's okay. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1. Okay. So now, I need to hear a couple of examples you've got, and in order to do that, let's do this. Every table needs to elect a CEO. If you've never had a chance to be CEO, now is your chance. Every table. So, it's going to be hard for you. It's going to be hard for you too. So, I tell you what, let's do this. Everybody, I've already lost control. Everybody, put your fingers in the air. Everybody, fingers in the air. Point straight up. Point straight up. Everybody means everybody. On the count of 3, point to somebody. 1, 2, 3. All right. So, okay. So now wait a minute. Every table. What'd you guys do? yeah. That's a tough one on this one. Yeah. So every table should have a CEO, and so this is what we're going to do. I need to hear, I'm not going to go to every table, but I need to hear a couple of examples. So the CEO, you now, as a CEO, you can appoint a spokesperson for your table, okay? So now, that's what CEOs do. CEOs make decisions. So CEO, pick somebody at your table who's going to speak for the table, okay? All right. So let's start. Who's up? You guys have it? Who's your spokesperson? Okay. What? Give me an example of incivility.
We talked about mean, trying to hurt each other's feelings.
Mean, hurting feelings. Yeah, absolutely. How about the table back in the back?
We talked about lack of respect for an individual and being inconsiderate to your coworkers.
Inconsiderate with coworkers. Absolutely. One more. No empathy or lack of empathy. Absolutely. All good examples of incivility. And it can be, again, it could be a lot of things. It can be what we just saw. It could be that berating. It could be a boss or even a coworker yelling at an employee. You know, I say at best in private, one-on-one. You know, it's even worse when it's in a public setting or in a team setting. It could be not wanting to listen, refusing to engage. It can be inviting the whole team out except for that one person on the team to lunch or to happy hour. It can be outright bullying or outright, conflict. It can be passive aggressive. It can be, dishonesty. It takes a lot of forms. Incivility basically is anything that is used to intimidate people or really just make people feel uncomfortable. Right? There's different degrees of it. Here's what I meant about technology. Here's a tweet by Tom Peters. We're going to hear from Tom Peters a couple of times today. Tom Peters is arguably, well, not arguably, he was voted one of the top 50, I think it was 50 management minds of all time. He wrote a book, several books. One's called In Search of Excellence, one of my favorite books. He makes an amazing quote. He says, "My greatest goal in life is to be plagiarized without any credit." Right? What an amazing thought, especially today when we're sure we try to hold on to all of our property and lawyers get. Oh, yeah, my filter. I try to. Are you legal? Oh, are there any legal lawyers in here? Any legals? Legal? Okay, then we can talk about them. So, but an amazing thought, right? I mean, Tom Peters says, "Look, if it helps you, if it helps your company, use it. I don't care if I get credit for it." And a gentleman by the name of Chris Gotts, he gets online, he goes, "Hey, how about learning how to spell plagiarism?" Really? To one of the most influential management minds in the world, and I don't think he would have said that to him personally. Now, we don't know the spirit behind that. We don't know the attitude that he did that. But if he really cared about Tom Peters as a person, he could have sent him a direct message outside of the public view where I couldn't pull it out for a presentation. And he could say, "Hey, dude, you misspelled the word." Now, Tom Peters is very, very gracious in that he says, "Oh my gosh, I did it a second time. Thanks. Thanks for letting me know. I was really embarrassed." Now, as incivility goes, is this a horrible example? No, it's not. But it is, I think, just another one of those constant drip, drip, drip of what we're going through in the world today. Here's another one. Again, I understand it's hard to see, but it's an art. Don't get hung up on the content of the article. It's an article that the New Yorker magazine wrote, and it's about President Trump and Air Force One and how Ivanka likes to take that plane. Whether you agree with the political commentary or not, that's not the point. The point is this. When New Yorker writes that article, a lady named Liz Ryan, she tweets it out with her little comment, classic. But look who retweets it. An organization called Let's Keep It Civil.org retweeted it. I mean, that's how bad it is today. That an organization that's dedicated to civility actually is adding to the incivility. Now, a couple of points here. I want to park here for just a second. First of all, is I love that organization. If you're on Twitter or if you're looking for some ideas about civility and how we can have that here, go check out letskeepitcivil.org. They do a great job. I mean, they really are committed to civility. They do kind of make their political feelings known, and I wince when they do that a little bit. I wish they wouldn't, and it's not that they do it, it's how they do it. So I wince a little bit, but overall it's a really good organization. Here's the bigger point, though. We're going to touch on, for the next few minutes, we may touch on some pretty sensitive topics. We may touch on politics. I know we're going to touch on race. We may touch on gender. We may touch on generations. And it's going to be uncomfortable. But that's okay. If we're ever going to get on the other side of comfortable, or to get to that comfortable side, we have to push through this. We're going to use race and we're going to use gender as props to help us carry on our conversation. And if we're not careful, we get stuck on the wrong things. For example, I just said that we're going to use race or gender as a prop. And somebody could say, really? Something as sensitive and something as important as race and gender, and you're going to use it as a prop? That's not the point. The point is, words are important. Don't get me wrong. Words are very important. We need to choose them carefully. But more important than that, we need to understand the attitude, the hearts, and the meanings behind some things that people say. Does that make sense? So there's going to be some times when we're going to laugh. I'm a funny guy. I'm the funniest person I know. And there's going to be some times when it's really quiet here, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But that's okay. So can we agree for the next 45 or 50 minutes that inside these walls we can be uncomfortable? Because I have a feeling, I'm confident that when we walk out of here, we're going to be just a little bit more comfortable with these discussions. Okay? That's my commitment to you. I'm confident we're going to get there. Let's dig into this idea about incivility a little bit more. There's another organization called ELI Inc. Any training, any learning and development people here? I don't know if you've ever heard of ELI Inc., but they're a great organization, and they are dedicated also to civility. And they've got a couple of training programs called Civil Treatment for Leaders and Civil Treatment for Employees. So if you ever wanted to really dive into this idea of civility and how does it play out here, there'd be a great organization to look at. They have what they call an incivility triangle. And they break out levels of incivility. So at the lowest level, it's just it's rude behavior. Rude, unprofessional. Kind of like that, really learn how to spell plagiarize. It's not horrible as incivility goes, but that's the most pervasive. That's what we see the most of, is that rude, unprofessional behavior. Right above that, it's unwelcome, unjust. Basically, that's just the first level kind of magnified and done over and over and over. All right, your rudeness, something, I can put up with it every once in a while, but every single morning you're in the cube next to me and you're rude. I just can't take it anymore. You go above that, then you get it's worse. You don't see it as much, but it's worse. It's outright bullying. And then finally, at the very top of the triangle, it's the illegal stuff. So that's going to be sexual harassment. It's going to be hostile work environment. Interestingly, that the first three squares aren't illegal. It's not until we get to that very, very top that it's illegal, and our lawyer friends help us out there. Now, some of those things below there might get you fired. You may not be working here, but they're not illegal. But all of this we need to make, and the low-hanging fruit, the rude and unprofessional, that's the stuff that's the most insidious. That happens a lot, and we need to make sure that we're guarding against that. There's a video. This is the president of ELI. He's going to talk a little bit about this idea of incivility and how bad it is.
And that's why it's critical to build a civil treatment workplace.
Are you serious? Now it's personal. I mean, I'm sitting there on the operating table, and my vital signs start to go south, and the anesthesiologist doesn't want to say anything because he doesn't want to get yelled at? Right? That's an extreme case, I understand, but if you're the person on that operating table, it's serious. That's why if we allow that low-hanging bottom of the pyramid type behavior get by and it starts to creep up, it could impact us in this case, a very deadly way. There's also this idea, one more idea about this idea of incivility and rudeness. It's contagious. The Wall Street Journal wrote an article and they said rude behavior is as contagious as the common cold. So listen to this idea about contagiousness.
So rude-colored glasses is this idea that depending on things that have happened to me before, I may perceive future incidents in a different way. So it's basically my tendency to, if I have previously experienced rudeness, to see things later as more rude. So if somebody's rude to me in the morning, then at 10:30, later on in the day, I have an interaction with somebody, I'm more likely to interpret that interaction as rude as well, particularly if that interaction is ambiguous. So if somebody were to say to me, hey, nice shoes. Again, nice shoes is an ambiguous thing, right? I don't know if you're making a joke about my shoes or if you're giving me a compliment about my shoes. And rude colored glasses is this idea that depending on my cognitive frame, I may actually have this perceptual idea that this perceptual tendency to lean towards the rude interpretation. So if somebody's rude to me early in the morning and then you say nice shoes, I'm more likely to interpret that as rude than if I had not had that earlier rude interaction. So what we're seeing is that prior interactions can give us these rude colored glasses that color our interactions throughout the rest of the day. Particularly in ambiguous situations where benefit of the doubt is important. Time of day matters for the rude colored glasses phenomenon because the earlier you experience that first interaction, the longer it has to play out through your workday. So the more interactions, it's just a function of time and volume. So if I experience my first rude encounter at 5 o'clock, well, I'm almost done. So there's not very many interactions for that perceptual frame to influence. But if I experience it early in the morning, it has the whole day to play out.
So it's bad, it's contagious. And look at what comes out of uncivil behavior, incivility. Decreased efficiency, low morale, reputation damage. People find out that we're a rude company and workforce. It's going to be hard to find more workers to come join us. Bad engagement, distrust, turnover, and again, lawsuits at the very high level. You know, when I teach communication, one of the things I talk about is this idea of staying away from absolutes. Words like everything and always and never. But I think with incivility, this is one of those times when an absolute is appropriate to use. There is nothing good that can come from uncivil behavior. Nothing. So the question becomes this: why do we let it happen? Any ideas? Discuss that at your, again, I'll give you 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds. At your table, why would any company put up with any of this behavior, knowing that these are the outcomes? Why does that happen? 30 seconds at your table. Have something? Who's your spokesperson? Why would a company let some of this behavior go on? Fear of retribution, right? I don't want to call anything out because I want to be part of the team. I might get in trouble myself. And there are laws against retaliation. Let's understand that. But yeah, that could be a reason. What else? Back.
It could be one of those tools to battle with laziness or lethargy where things are just not getting done and maybe using some strong words to get that person moving.
Yeah, so it might be a management style that we let get by, but again, I would say that we can actually help get by. There's management styles that are better than bullying and abusive and demanding, but that could be. One more. Anybody else? Yes.
I think that people want to avoid conflict.
Yeah.
Something they might see that it's not right, but they don't want to.
They don't want to get involved. Absolutely. You know, the other one that kind of comes up a lot is that it's a key contributor. If in sales, it might be what they would call a rainmaker, the person who's got really good in sales. I'll never forget, I was working with an organization and I was doing some management training, and this happened to be a first-time management class. And so the very beginning of the class, we went around and we introduced ourselves, and I say your name and what you've done, and what are you looking forward to most about being a manager, a people manager? And one of the guys walked up and he goes, I forget what his name was, but he goes, I don't want to be a manager, but they're making me. And this was within the first 5 minutes of the class, so I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. Halfway, and this was a day-long class, and so right after lunch, a little bit after lunch, he came up to me and he goes, hey, look, it's nothing against you, good content, you're really good, but I just can't take it anymore. And he goes, I'm going to leave. And he packed up his stuff and he left. I mean, I thought it was so egregious that behavior. I mean, and look, I've done this for a long time. I'm used to, don't heckle me, but I can handle it if you do, okay? But don't. No, and people not engaging and not. But this behavior was really bad. So I went up to the manager, and he was in IT, and I said, "This is what I feel like I'm in junior high, but this is what happened." And he goes, "Yeah, he's crusty, but he's brilliant, and we need him." So, crusty really wasn't the word I would have chosen for him. But now 6 months later, he ended up being let go. because his behavior didn't stop there. It was so bad, the team was under revolt, and it was either lose the team or lose him. And so he got let go. I do want to clarify something. Even though on this triangle, I said that at the very top, and again, I'm not a lawyer, so but I stayed a Holiday Inn once, and so I can play one. Okay, sometimes I'm going to say something that's funny. And if you laugh, it would be good. And sometimes I'm going to say something that I meant to be funny, but it wasn't. If you'll laugh anyway, it's going to be good for all of us, okay? So only that top is illegal when you get into sexual harassment and hostile work environment, right? But let's be clear. You do this, and I said below, those bottom 3 points are not illegal, but let's be very, very clear. If you do those things enough, if you're rude enough and you do unwelcome behavior enough, you fall into that. Those individual behaviors might not be illegal, but you end up falling up or going all the way to the top to a hostile work environment, right? If you're a team leader and you're acting that way with your team, you're going to find yourself in a lawsuit of having a hostile work environment. So even though those bottom ones aren't illegal in and of themselves, they can lead to lawsuits. Okay, I'm going to make sure I made that clarification. So what's the cost? One last point, and then we're going to move on to how do we avoid all of this. But I want to make sure that we understand there's a huge cost to this idea of uncivility. Now, I haven't found any research that talks about the cost of incivility or an uncivil workplace. But I do know that there's a lot of research done on just this idea of disengaged employees or unengaged employees. And I think incivility is a major contributor. I mean, a lot goes into it. A bad boss, low pay, whatever. But incivility and just rude behavior and not liking the people you're working with is a big contributor to this idea of disengaged employees. Some of you may have heard this. Gallup has done a study, the big firm Gallup, and they've done it for 10 years, and sadly the numbers have stayed about the same. And they say this, that 30% of our employees are engaged. And those are the employees that are they're going the extra mile, they're giving the extra effort, they're doing their best every single day, 30%. We have 50% of our employees that they're not unengaged, but they're not disengaged. They're just there showing up every day. Now, some of those would be what we would call, the people who show up every day, and we need the people who we would know them as steady Eddies, right? Or just to be fair, since this is grow, steady Stacy, I guess. I don't know, something like right? So yeah, Steady Betty. Okay, there we go. Yeah, all right. Okay, that's a good one. So, and so we need some people like that, but then there are people who just show up and they're trading hours for dollars. And they're not doing anything to help. I mean, they're getting a paycheck, but that's all they're doing is getting a paycheck. That's 50%. And then there's 20% of our employees who are actively disengaged. And they're the ones who, if you're a leader in here, they're the ones who are making your management life harder. They're toxic to the team. They're certainly not a brand ambassador for us outside these four walls. So think about that, 20% or so. If you're a leader and you've got 5 people on your team, I'm just saying, right? So Gallup has done some research. They said, okay, what's the cost of those unengaged, those actively disengaged employees? And they found out that 34% of your salary, or of that disengaged employee's salary, is a waste. It's costing that organization every $10,000, $3,400. Now, this is a fictitious company. I just did the math. Let's say we have a company of 5,000 employees, and I know we're much bigger here, but you could do the math. You could apply the same kind of statistics. 20% of 5,000 is 1,000 employees. And let's say this company had a median salary of $60,000. 34% of that is $20,400 per employee. Do the math. 1,000 employees, $20,000 per employee. Actively disengaged employees is costing this company $20 million a year. So there's a lot of cost as far as low morale, turnover, but it's also a very financial point of it's costing real dollars. What if we could take 10% of those actively disengaged and move them up, not all the way to engage, but just move them up one section? Financially, it's a big benefit for an organization. Does that make sense? We could go on, but I think hopefully I've made the point. Incivility is costing us a lot. It's a real problem. And it's getting worse. We started out earlier by saying we feel it outside these walls, and if we're not careful, it's going to start impacting us every single day. And because we spend over half of our adult life at work, we have to do what we do well, but we've got to enjoy it too. We've got to enjoy getting up in the morning and doing the work with the people that we work with. So what's the answer? I think there's one skill that we can implement. Again, it's very simple, like I said earlier, and it's valuing others. I thought you did a great job, and I think that you have a culture here. In fact, you should probably give the rest of the presentation. No? No, but you did. I love some of the things that you said about helping people, bringing people in. The steps that you laid out were really good, and that's the idea of building a culture where people are valued. I wrote about that in one of the books I wrote called 3 + 4 = Success. It's the 3 skills that you need for success, and there's 3 skills and 4 mindsets. And the 3 skills are critical thinking, effective communication, and valuing people, which I've been challenged on. Is that a skill? I believe it is a skill. I believe it can be learned. I think it can be practiced and improved upon, which is what we'll talk about for the rest of our time. If you do those 3 things well, you'll be successful. If you marry on top of that 4 mindsets, and I put them in the form of a question, and the answer is yes for each one, you'll supercharge your success. The questions are this. Am I willing to be a continuous learner? Am I willing to work hard? Am I willing to work hard? And yes, thank you very much. That was awesome. Yes, yeah. I didn't have to wait very long for that one, so that's good. No, look, come to work. Communicate well, think well, value the people that you work with. Be willing to learn something new, and do your best every day. If you do those things, you can't help but be successful. But why is it so hard? That valuing people thing, why is it so hard? It's because we're different. We're old, we're young, we're black, we're white, we're male, we're female. And those are just the outward characteristics. Right? There's so many internal characteristics as well. When I was here last time, we went through this little bit of an exercise, and I had everybody kind of measure themselves, and you rated me on a couple of scales, loud and quiet. And so, if you weren't here last time, let's go ahead and do this. Rate me. Would you put me on the loud side or quiet side? Okay, that was really hurtful. Not only I expected 1 or 2, but not the whole room. I mean, really. But no, it's true. I'm really on the loud side. Funny or serious? Funniest person I know. Thank you for agreeing with me. I appreciate that. Would anybody raise your hand if you say that you are quiet and serious? Anybody? You put your hand up first. Yep. Oh, the person behind you. The person. You're in the middle? Okay. Yes. How about you? She's like, oh, wait a minute. He's picking on me. I don't know. I'm loud. What are you? You said you're quiet and serious. Okay. Okay. What's your name? Yvonne. Yvonne, you know what drives me crazy? You do. Oh my gosh. Yes, she drives me crazy. Right? I like to talk. You never talk. You don't banter with me. You might have fun, but not in my style of fun, right? And by the way, you never laugh at my jokes. And we've established I'm a funny guy. Okay? So, let me ask you a question. What drives you crazy? You can say it. Yeah, I do. Yeah. She was trying to be very nice. Well, loud and funny people. No, yeah, I do. I drive you crazy. Because you're saying, well, I can't talk because I can't get a word in edgewise. And by the way, you're not as funny as you think you are. But here's the point. We make each other better. I'm not saying that we're going to be BFFs and we're going to get together on Facebook and go on vacations together. But at work, we're going to make each other better. We complement each other. Right? I need her to sit there and kind of tap me on the arm and say, hey, let somebody else talk. Or now's the time to be serious. But Yvonne needs me too. She needs to say, hey, Yvonne, we've heard from everybody else on the team, but we haven't heard from you, and your opinion's important, so what do you think? But that makes it difficult. And those are just 2. Let's do this. We're going to do this I'm going to do a couple of them just for time's sake. We could do a whole lot more, but at your table, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a couple pairs of words. And I want you, and when I say, are you this, I want you to raise your hand and look around at your table, and some of you are going to have your hands raised, and some of you aren't. Does that make sense? So look at yourself. So if you consider yourself like more of a scientific person, facts and figures as opposed to artistic, raise your hand. Now the tables, look around your tables. You can see some people have their hands up, and everybody whose hand is not up means that they're on the artistic. Now granted, you may be somewhere in the middle, right? You're not always an extreme. Some people that's a continuum. But we tend to lean, I mean, there's some people who could say, no, I am right in the middle, and that's true. But most of us tend to lean kind of one side or the other. Okay? Here's do another one. Morning or night? Raise your hand if you're a morning person. Okay. Now, you morning people, look at your night people. Morning people, look at the night people. I'm just telling you right, if you haven't figured it out already, don't talk to them until noon, okay? They don't want to engage with you. They don't want to talk with you. They want to have their 4 or 5 cups of coffee before they start talking. Okay? But if you're that morning person and somebody comes in and you say, hey, how you doing? Hey, we're going to have fun today. Let's do some work. They're like, okay, you're driving me crazy. Right? There's, again, we'll move on, but you get the idea. There's competitive and my wife won't play games with me because I don't know why you would play a game without winning. Right? I mean, I take my time, every single move I agonize over because I want it to be the best move, and then when I lose, I'm not the best loser, okay? So she just doesn't like to play games with me. How do you make decisions? Some people do kind of a gut feel. Some people analyze things. For us gut feel people, the people who analyze can drive us crazy. We're like, come on, let's make a decision. Change, routine. Some people like change. Some people like routine. Here's one. Raise your hands on this one. If you are the type of person who, I'm not going to call them a perfectionist, although it's probably close to that, but if you just like to have either a project or a PowerPoint or something before you show anybody, if you want it to be 100% accurate, it's done, raise your hand. As opposed to us 80% people, I'm like, I've maybe get 80% there and I'll work on that last 20%. It'll be a group effort, right? So I do that sometimes. And then last one, how do you get your energy? You could almost say this is an introvert-extrovert thing. Do you get your energy by being alone, reading a book by yourself, or when you're tired, do you say, I need some more energy, I'm going to go to a party? Right? And that's how social people get their energy, is by being around other people. And there's more. I just picked out a handful. But did you see at your tables how you raised we're all different. And some people matched on certain characteristics, and some people were opposite on other characteristics. That's why it's so hard to value people, because we're all different. And although, let's face it, some people are just genuinely hard to value. I understand that. Don't go bumping anybody on the side or pointing at anybody. Okay, that's not the point here. But everybody has value, and that's we're going to talk about that. I'm not going to get into it. Again, I could show you more research. This isn't a research-heavy presentation, but there's all kinds of research that says valuing people and building a culture where people are valued has tremendous payoff. Public companies, their stock is higher than the market average, and certainly higher than companies that don't have an engaging culture. Employees, you tend to have more of those engaged employees. Customer service is higher. Turnover is lower. Creativity is higher. Innovation is higher. Agility is higher. Here's one of those times when, again, you can use an absolute. Nothing bad can come from a culture that values people, and that's an engaging culture. I truly don't understand why every single company doesn't get on board with this idea. Because the research is clear. Companies who take the deliberate steps to build a culture where people are valued and where people are engaged, they outperform companies that don't. There's no debate, but yet some companies don't. Some companies don't, and that's a discussion for another day. If you want a really good book, this guy named Michael Stollard wrote a book called Connection Culture, and he has some training and got a good blog, and he talks about this idea of connecting people. He takes a little bit of a spin of saying not valuing people, but connecting people. And today there's I don't know if you've read, but there's an epidemic of loneliness. Because of this, we're more connected together than ever, and yet we're lonelier than ever. And he says this. He has an interesting quote. He says, wise leaders know that applying human value in the work culture can make a world of difference by firing up people, ultimately affecting their own success or failure as leaders. So if you're a leader, it's a good thing to do. It helps us personally. Now, we don't want to do it because of that. People will find out that you're not genuine. At some point, you'll get caught and your true colors will come out. But it is a great byproduct. If you're a leader and you do this thing to build a culture that values other, it's not only good for the people in that culture, but it's good for you as the leader. It will help you in your career. Again, I don't know why more people companies and individuals don't do that. So, how do we do it? How do you build that? Some people are naturally better at it. Some people are pretty good at valuing others. Others need some more help. And so there's 5 steps that I think that we can do. If you do all 5 or do some of them, I think it will build, if we're deliberate, it will build a culture here where people are valued, or it might just be our own personal ethos, our own personal, team leader, or just individual as we go throughout life, value people muscles. And I'm going to list all 5 of them, and then we're going to go into them, each one of them a little bit deeper. One of them is just viewing people as important. It starts with this idea of just saying, you know something, there's value in people, period. End of story. Next is assisting in small ways, looking for ways where you can help other people. Next is listening. And not just listening on a scale of 1 to 10, although that's important, you want to be a good listener, but listening with this idea of being influenced. Next is understanding where we're similar. Because if we understand there's more that binds us than separates us. And if we understand how we're similar, we can have the discussions, those hard discussions that we need to have. And then finally, explain. Tell people. I wanted to use tell, but it didn't make the word that I wanted, and so I had to use E. And so it's explain to people why they're valued, why you value them. Let's go into. By the way, each one of these is a hours, half day, some of them an entire day presentation. And we don't have time to do that, so we're just going to go through them very quickly. The point of today's presentation, again, it's not research heavy. It's not really, we've laughed a few times, and we'll probably laugh a few more times, but it's not really designed to be a funny presentation. It's a presentation where you can walk out this door today, and I'm going to give you some practical steps where you can start building your personal value others muscles, and you can do it as on your teams, and you can do it as an entire organization. Again, by what I can tell, I think you guys are already really good at that, but we can always get better. And then the other point of this presentation is just to make us think. How do we treat other people? Both here at work and outside at work. So let's go into each one of them.